There was a time when I couldn't escape the feeling that the world was on the verge of collapse. And at some point, amidst news of climate change, wars and political crises, I began to wonder if we, as a species, were just noisy spectators of an inevitable tragedy. After all, how can a single individual illuminate a world plunged into darkness? To my surprise, I found an answer, a glimmer of eternal power within me, in an unexpected place. In the stillness of a late afternoon beside a window, I watched heavy clouds hanging over a city and the first lights beginning to awaken in the twilight. It was as if, amidst shadows and flickering lights, I could feel the perfect peace that silently emerged to remind me that something greater resided within me. That moment revealed to me what books, speeches, and promises never had. True power doesn't come from outside. It awakens in silence when we manage to quiet ourselves enough to hear it. In that instant of contemplation, I understood that activating this power didn't mean changing the entire world at once, but changing my way of being in it. I began to realize that all the times I felt hope, even amidst the chaos, it wasn't a coincidence. It was a reminder, a whisper from my essence telling me, you are already light. And maybe, just maybe, that's the first step to transforming everything around us, recognizing that we are more than survivors of a collapsing system. We are creators. Since then, my journey has changed. I wasn't saved by a miracle, but by a shift in perspective. I started seeing challenges as invitations and pain as portals to a new kind of strength. Fear still appears, of course, but now I listen to it with more wisdom, knowing that it's also part of the awakening process. It's not easy. Every day, we are bombarded with distractions, algorithms, and tragedies that numb us. But there is a place within each of us that remains intact, a silent point of truth. And that's where our power resides. Our role, while everything seems to be crumbling, is to remember this, to remember that the collapse of the old world can be the birth of something greater, and that something begins here, now, within me, within you. I was always a skeptic, or rather, I was trained to be. I grew up believing that anything that couldn't be measured, tested, or proven had no value. It was just fantasy. And for a long time, I believed that faith and science belonged to opposite worlds, until the day science began to prove what mystics had been saying for centuries. It was during a lecture on neuroscience that everything began to change. The researcher projected images of brain activity during deep meditation, entire areas lit up like cities seen from above. She explained how the constant practice of visualization and gratitude literally rewires the brain's structure. It was like listening to a scientist translate prayers into neural language. With each new study I learned about, a penny dropped. Our mind isn't just reactive, it's creative. The way we think and feel physically shapes who we become. The brain doesn't distinguish between what is imagined and what is lived. When you visualize something with emotional intensity, your body responds as if it were already real. That's when I realized faith isn't just belief, it's biochemistry. I started testing this idea. Every morning I took 10 minutes to visualize the version of myself I wanted to manifest, not just the appearance, but the feelings, how I walked, how I talked, how I saw the world. At first it seemed ridiculous, but over time something changed. My posture, my focus, my presence. People around me started to notice, not because I told them, but because I transmitted it. Science calls this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt, reorganize, and transform its connections. This fascinated me. I, a former skeptic, now believed in miracles, but not those of divine intervention, rather those that bloom from within when we align mind, emotion, and intention. And this isn't esoteric theory. A study from Harvard Medical School revealed that simple practices of visualization and meditation reduce stress levels by up to 43% and increase areas of the brain related to empathy, creativity, and focus. Another, from the University of Wisconsin, showed that Buddhist monks with decades of practice had significantly more developed brains in the regions responsible for compassion and self-awareness. I started realizing that the ancients were right, but now we had the right words, the charts, the MRI scans to prove it. What masters called divine presence, science called a state of cardiac and neurological coherence. It was the same phenomenon, seen through different lenses. And then I realized something even deeper. If we can change our brain, we can change our reality, because the way we perceive the world is built from what we carry internally. If we cultivate fear, we see threat. If we cultivate gratitude, we see possibility. Today, I see the brain as a temple, a sacred space where each thought is a candle lit or extinguished. And it's up to me to choose which ones to light. It's no longer about praying, hoping something external will save me. It's about activating daily this power given to me to shape my consciousness and consequently my destiny. When someone says they don't have faith, I understand. I was that person. But now I know that faith isn't blind. It can be trained, nurtured, cultivated like a muscle or a skill. And that's precisely what modern science is starting to show us clearly. The bridge between spirituality and science exists, and crossing it is one of the most liberating experiences I've ever had. I discovered that I can trust something greater without having to abandon reason. On the contrary, my reason today leads me to trust, because the data also points in that direction. There is an intelligence operating through us, which responds not just to what we say, but to what we feel. And by learning to combine clear thought with elevated emotion, we create a language that the universe understands. I am no longer a skeptic. I am conscious. And this consciousness is the beginning of all transformation. I don't know if you've experienced this, but there are moments when reality seems to respond to what we feel inside, as if the universe hears not our words, but our deepest emotions. And the more I observe, the more I realize what we feel shapes what we live. I discovered this by chance during a visualization exercise someone recommended to me. It was simple. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and imagine, with the greatest possible detail, a situation I wanted to experience. In my case, it was an important conversation I needed to have at work, one that would change the course of my career. In that exercise, I didn't just imagine myself saying the right words. I felt the relief of being understood, the security of knowing I was on the right path, the smell of the room, the sound of the air conditioning, even the texture of the table. Everything came alive in my mind. And something curious happened. When the actual moment arrived, it was like reliving a memory. I was calm, centered, present. That experience planted a seed. I started practicing this type of visualization more often. But I learned an even more important lesson. It's not enough to imagine, you have to feel. Because the feeling is what transforms a mental image into a vibrational command. I started researching. I discovered that Olympic athletes use visualization before competitions, that CEOs use this practice before decisive negotiations. But more than that, I realized that children do this all the time. When they play, they live the stories as if they were real. They believe, they feel, they create. I then realized that I also once knew this. I had just forgotten. When we feel something as if it were already real, we create a kind of energetic signature. It's like we're telling the universe, this is how I feel when this has already happened. And somehow, reality responds. I'm not saying that it's enough to imagine for everything to change like magic, but I am saying that feeling what we want as if it were already present transforms us from within, and that transformation changes the way we act, how we speak, how we choose, and that's where the world changes. I started applying this to simple things. A difficult day at work, a family dinner, a tough conversation. Before living these situations, I would put myself in a state of gratitude. I would visualize the best possible scenario and connect with the emotion I wanted to feel. Sometimes things turned out exactly as I imagined. Other times they didn't. But the most important thing is that I was already different, less reactive, more available. And when we change inside, we attract new responses from outside. It's as if reality were a mirror that doesn't just reflect appearance, but vibration. If I wake up with anxiety, everything seems to go against me. If I wake up with gratitude, everything flows. It's not perfection, it's perception. Today, visualization is no longer a sporadic ritual. It's part of my routine, sometimes for 5 minutes. Other times, while brushing my teeth or before going to sleep, I no longer wait for big events to feel happy. I train that feeling, and little by little, I discover that what I train myself to feel starts to appear in my life in unexpected ways. Because emotion is more than a reaction, it's a language. And when we learn to use it consciously, we open channels of manifestation that were dormant. I'm not saying this as a magic formula. I'm saying this as someone who has lived, tested, and observed. Maybe the universe doesn't speak Portuguese or English or any human language, but it understands the language of the heart perfectly. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from here, it's this. You already have the power to transform your life. Not tomorrow, now. Just remember something we all already knew when we were children. Imagining is not escaping, it is creating. Feeling is not weakness, it is code. So next time you think of something you desire, don't just say, I want. Feel as if it were already real. Feel the relief, the joy, the peace, and observe, because what you feel is what you start to live. For a long time, my biggest struggle was deciding between yes and no, the safe and the uncertain. I would get lost in analysis, pros and cons lists, friends' advice, Google searches. But no matter how much information I gathered, the feeling was the same: noise. It was like trying to hear a whisper in the middle of a crowded stadium. It was in an extreme situation that everything changed. I was about to make a decision that could change my life, quitting my steady job to pursue a personal project. Everything pointed to it being rational: security, salary, stability. But there was a subtle voice, one that didn't scream, but persisted, a kind of silent certainty. And although it didn't give me all the answers, there was something in it that didn't leave me in peace. That was the first moment I truly listened to my intuition. And I'm not talking about magic. I'm talking about that feeling you get even before you know why. A yes born in the chest, a no that tightens your stomach, something that doesn't ask for arguments, just presence. I started observing more. I began to remember past moments, right decisions that made no logical sense, but which I felt were correct. And others, rational, well-structured, that led me to dead ends. The difference, intuition was present in some, ignored in others. That's when I realized intuition doesn't compete with logic. It comes before. It's faster than reasoning. It's the voice of wisdom that resides beyond the mind. Science is already starting to investigate this seriously. Studies from the University of Leeds show that the human brain is capable of processing large volumes of information unconsciously, creating intuitive responses based on experiences we don't even consciously remember. In other words, our intuition isn't guesswork, it's an intelligent yet subtle system. I started practicing listening to it. Yes, practicing. Because intuition is like a muscle. The more it's used, the stronger it gets. Sometimes it presents as a sensation in the body, other times as a thought that arises effortlessly. But the most important thing is the state that allows you to hear it. Silence. Not external silence, but internal. The pause between thoughts. The calm between urgencies. That's why meditating became more than a technique. It became my channel of attunement, and the more I tuned in, the more I noticed. Small signs, coincidences, encounters that seemed casual, but carried messages. It was as if life started talking. To me, using a language I was finally learning to decipher. But be warned, following intuition isn't always easy. Often, it goes against the grain. Against logic, against plans. Sometimes it asks for courage, other times patience, but it never let me down. Every time I trusted, even while trembling, something greater revealed itself. An improbable outcome, an unexpected opportunity, an internal relief that had no explanation, but made perfect sense. Today, before any decision, I stop, I breathe, I ask, how does this sound within me? And I stay in silence. Sometimes the answer comes quickly. Other times it takes time. But it comes. It always comes. Because the truth is, we all have this inner compass. The problem is that we get distracted by the world's noise. We wait for approval, likes, external validation, forgetting that the most powerful wisdom lives within. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Intuition is a gift that comes. Already installed. It doesn't need to be earned, just remembered. And when you learn to listen to it, the world changes color. You no longer need to predict everything. Just follow the next step that makes sense in the silence. One step at a time, one decision at a time. Until, looking back, you realize it was your own wisdom that brought you here. Trust. Even when you don't understand, especially when you don't understand, because perhaps in that moment your soul is trying to speak louder than your mind. For a long time, I confused trust with control. I thought that to achieve what I wanted, I needed to have everything in hand, predict every step, avoid errors at all costs. I got tired trying to force life to obey my plans, and when it didn't obey, I called it failure. It was only after many stumbles that I started to understand that there's another way to live. A way that isn't about giving up, but about surrendering. It seems contradictory, I know. How to trust and let go at the same time. How to strongly desire something and at the same time release control over when and how it will happen. The answer began to reveal itself when I realized that every time I let go, things flowed better. It was as if, by taking my hands off the steering wheel, I allowed life to show me paths that I alone wouldn't be able to see. And this doesn't mean sitting back and doing nothing. It means acting with intention, but walking with lightness. Giving my best and then releasing the outcome. It's the opposite of anxiety. It's radical trust. I learned that when I cling to the how and the when, I close the doors to infinite possibilities that weren't on my radar. And instead, when I declare the what with clarity, but allow the universe to take care of the rest, something magical happens. The unexpected becomes common. I started practicing this in small gestures, sending a resume and not checking my email every 5 minutes, recording a video with truth and not getting caught up in the numbers, making a difficult choice and trusting that, even if it hurts at first, it will lead me to a more aligned place. And the more I let go, the more things started to align. True surrender isn't passivity, it's partnership. It's recognizing that an intelligence is operating alongside me and that it sees further. It's like rowing with determination, but also knowing when to let the boat follow the right current. Gradually, I began to understand that this surrender requires an essential ingredient, trust in the invisible. And this trust is only born when we reconnect with who we truly are, when we remember that we are part of something greater and that this something isn't against us. It's guiding us, shaping us, strengthening us. Yes, I still have days when I want to control everything. I still get impatient, but now I know the way back. I return to the center, I breathe, I release, and I observe. Because in the end, surrender is a gesture of love, a vote of confidence in life, a silent affirmation that we are exactly where we should be, learning what we need to learn, even when it doesn't seem like it. If you are living through a moment of doubt, transition, waiting, I want to tell you, you can trust. Breathe deeply, look around, see the signs, listen to your heart, and then release. Do your part with courage, and then let life do its. The magic isn't in excessive effort, but in the alignment between intention and trust. You don't need to force, you just need to flow. And if this script, these words, have touched something within you, perhaps this is your sign. Perhaps you are ready to live with more lightness, more truth, more surrender, because ultimately, we're not here to control life, we're here to dance with it. If this message resonated with you, if it touched some part of your inner journey, then share this video with someone who also needs to hear this. And of course, subscribe to the channel. Here, we build together a space of reconnection, inspiration, and truth. Until the next video. And remember, letting go isn't giving up. It's trusting deeper.